I'm with Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. Now, Itamar, everyone likes pizza and we have our favorite toppings, but on August the 9th, 2001, buying a pizza turned out to be very deadly. Can you tell us a little bit more about the story?
Yes, it was one of the very tragic Palestinian terror attacks during the period of what they call the Intifada, their 4 or 5 year terror war, which was primarily a war of suicide terrorists. And one of the most tragic ones was when they attacked the Sbarro Pizza shop. Terrorists walked in with a bomb inside a guitar case, sat down and ate, and then when it was crowded with a lot of children, a lot of families, he detonated his bomb. So it killed him, but it also killed 15 people, amongst them 7 children, and an entire family was devastated. Parents and their 3 children were killed. So it's very, very one of the tragic memories that in the Israeli consciousness.
So he didn't just quickly walk in and blow his bomb. He actually sat down. He saw the people around him, and in a sense knew who he was going to kill.
Exactly. He saw the families. He saw the young children. He saw the infants. You see the pictures, you realize you talk about 3-4-year-olds who were killed, and he didn't care. One of the interesting statements related to the fact that there were children there was a statement by Ahlam Tamimi. Ahlam Tamimi was the female Palestinian Authority terrorist who planned this terror attack. And when she was interviewed on television and asked why did she choose this place, she said she surveyed it for a long time and saw that it was crowded with families. Literally, that was why she chose this. And when she was interviewed, and she was actually interviewed once while in prison, and then she was asked if she knew how many children were killed, and she said she thought there were 3. And then the interviewer said, no, there were 7. And you see she gets this big smile and says, oh, 7? 7. And she gets this great big smile. So she was thrilled that she killed that many children. And this is a woman who today is a Palestinian Authority hero. She's been honored. Her name is an inspiration. It's seen as an inspiration by the Palestinian Authority, as well as all the other terrorists in the Palestinian Authority. They are seen as heroes.
How do they honor her name?
So we see across the board terrorists are honored, and I'll give you an example of someone who was even more significant. Dalal Mughrabi hijacked a bus in which 37 people were killed, amongst them 12 children. Again, families were devastated. A mother and her 2 children were killed, a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old. Husband was left with nothing. His whole family was wiped out. So Dalal Mughrabi, who led this, has 5 schools named after her. Wow. She has numerous sporting events, including 2 just a few months ago. In March, there was a big sporting event for a number of schools for young women, high school girls. And if you look at it, was called the Sports Festival in the name of Dalal Mughrabi. And the students actually all wore T-shirts with her picture. So it wasn't just sort of, okay, we'll name it after Dalal Mughrabi. No, they put her picture. It said all the participants were looking at all the other girls the entire time of this sports festival. And who they were seeing? They were seeing a mass murderer of children. So the PA honors these people with glorifying them. And in addition, terrorists who go to jail get monthly salaries by the Palestinian Authority. Terrorists who are killed in their terror attack, like suicide bombers, their family gets a monthly stipend for life.
Now, I imagine when this sort of thing happens, when the pizza bombing happened, the police spring into action and are able to capture those responsible?
Hopefully, in most cases, yes. In the case of this particular suicide bombing at the Sbarro Pizza shop, eventually, not right away, all of the many different people who were involved in this, including the bomb maker, were eventually either captured or killed. Altogether, we're talking about 8 people who were directly involved in this terror attack.
And which organization was responsible for this attack?
This was done by Hamas. The bomb builder who built the bomb was Abdallah Barghouti. He built the bomb, and then it was passed on through someone else to Ahlam Tamimi, and she gave it to Muhammad Douglas. And in any case, there were all these different people who were involved. Now, today, every one of them who's in prison is getting a monthly salary. And all of those who were killed, either in the bombing, the suicide bomber, or in subsequent terror attacks, all their families are receiving monthly stipends. And we at Palestinian Media Watch have actually figured out how much money they've received altogether by now. They've received close to they've received $850,000. $850,000 from the Palestinian Authority as a reward for blowing up these people in a pizza shop.
So you go out and you commit a terrorist act, you're getting rewarded for it.
Absolutely. And just to give you a sense of the amount of money we're talking about, the average Palestinian Authority salary is, if we're talking in US dollars, is less than $1,000 a month. And a terrorist who's in jail long enough, the longer the terrorist's in jail, the higher the salary goes. If they're in jail long enough, they can get up to $3,500 to close to $4,000 a month. We're talking about 4 times the average salary in the Palestinian Authority. So they're not just rewarded with a minimal stipend, they're rewarded with a salary that can make them wealthy. And it does make them wealthy.
Now, the PA is the government of the Palestinian Authority, so this is the government. The government are actually paying their own people for doing terrorist acts?
Absolutely. The government's paying people, but you must realize the Palestinian Authority, a large percentage, every year it's different, sometimes a third, sometimes a quarter of their budget is coming from foreign donors. So the people who are actually paying for the salaries to terrorists are the foreign governments, are the foreign donors. The European Union, for many years, the money was literally going into the general budget and paying these salaries, and many European countries today continue to put money into the general budget of the PA, which pays these salaries to terrorists.
So I know that the British government give the Palestinian Authority money every year, so the money that we are giving actually isn't bringing peace, it's actually going to terrorists.
Absolutely. When we brought this to the attention of the British government and to British MPs, there were a number of debates in British Parliament about this over a number of years, actually, since we went for the first time we brought it to them. Eventually, the British government, to avoid having salaries going to terrorists, gives most of the money to the Ministry of Education today and to other social welfare issues. Part of the irony here is they're giving it to the Ministry of Education. And what's the Ministry of Education doing? They're naming schools after terrorists. That's the Ministry of Education. And it's not just the 5 schools after the murder at al-Mughrabi. We've documented over 24 schools named after terrorists, including 5 schools named after the terrorists who planned the massacre at the Olympics, of the Munich Olympics, of the Israeli athletes. And there are also 4 schools named after Abu Jihad. Abu Jihad was responsible for the murder of 125 people. So you're talking about the Palestinian Authority Ministry of Education being thoroughly involved in glorifying terror. It's not just in the names of schools, it's in the school books, it's hatred in the school books, it's everything about the education system is guaranteeing the next war and preventing peace, and yet the British government is funding it. So the donor countries, I definitely hold the donor countries responsible for the fact that we do not have peace today. Palestinian Media Watch first exposed Palestinian school books in 1998, and the international community has been making excuses for them. Had they told them right then, okay, you want a penny from us, change your school books, and we're going to pass on them before they're published. And they never did this. And so we have today another full generation of Palestinian children who are brought up to hate Israelis, brought up to want to kill Israelis, and brought up to want to kill themselves as martyrs, because they've been brought up to see martyrdom, dying for Allah, as the most important act that they could do in their lives.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if we as foreign countries are wanting to see peace here in the Middle East, we're pushing Israel, we're pushing the Palestinians together, you need to get peace, you need to get peace, but we're actually funding the terrorism ourselves.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, the only way, and this is my message when I do speak to parliaments around the world, if you want to bring peace, and you cannot do it by giving money to the Palestinian Authority, what you should be doing is, if you want to have peace, the money should be put into peace-building activities. And when I say peace-building, I mean, we have seen examples of sporting events that had Palestinians and Israelis participating, young children, and the quotes by these children at the end of one day of activities were incredible. Once there was a sporting event, and a Palestinian boy named Kusai, an 11-year-old, was quoted by France Press saying, I love it when we play together like this. I hope we have no more wars and peace. So here you have one day of people-to-people contact. Now that's where the foreign governments who want peace should be put it into people-to-people contact, especially at the young children level, 11, 12-year-olds. They're old enough to be impacted, and it'll stick with them. Create leagues. create leagues where kids will be participating in meeting Israelis and Palestinians will be meeting on a regular basis over the year. With the amount of money that the international community is putting into the PA, you could build special stadiums for this in special safe areas. You could have not just sports. You could have music. You should have chess clubs. You could have bands and orchestras. We're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds a year. So if this money were put into these kind of activities, all of the Palestinian Authority hate education and hate messaging would be useless, because the kids would say, hey, wait a second, I know Israelis. All this stuff is not true. And that's the key to peace, and unfortunately that's not where the money is being put yet today.
As an organization, you're telling the world about what's going on. Are they listening?
The world is listening today, and as I said to you, Britain, for example, stopped funding the PA directly. The EU also stopped giving money to the general budget. The United States, because of this story that we exposed of the salaries to the terrorists, has eventually passed a law, the Taylor Force Act, named after an American citizen, Taylor Force, who was murdered in Tel Aviv, and U.S. Congress was horrified to know that the family of the murderer was receiving a monthly stipend for life because he murdered Taylor Force. And the United States passed legislation that until the PA stops paying salaries to terrorists and stops paying stipends to the families of the so-called martyrs, they can't get any American money. And to date, right now, the Palestinian Authority doesn't get any American aid. Now, if all the world would do that, the PA would be forced to change. And right now, the United States doing that by themselves isn't enough. Let the entire world tell the PA, if you're supporting terror, you're not getting support from us. And then the PA will have to decide, do they want to be a terror organization identical with Hamas, which in many respects they are today? But if they're willing to make that decision, then they'll make that decision, and the world will isolate them, and then hopefully eventually the Palestinian people will replace them with better leadership. But as long as this terror-promoting PA is supported financially by the international community, there is no future for the Palestinian people, because they're going to have a terror-promoting leadership, and there's no future for peace.
It must have been a terrible time for the families to have lost their loved ones in this pizza bombing, but it must be even worse and a big kick in the teeth for them to know that the people who've actually committed this crime are getting paid.
Absolutely true. There are people like the Roth family lost a daughter. Malky Roth was killed in this, and her father, Arnold Roth, I know we speak to him regularly. He's horrified. He's horrified by the fact, and he's gone around the world literally with our material, and he showed it to members of parliaments. Look at what you are doing with your money. There's another person who was actually a British woman, Kay Wilson. She was stabbed and left for dead in Jerusalem. She was stabbed 13 times, and Hamas terrorists left her for dead. In the end, she survived, and she has actually traveled with me to parliaments in Europe, where I have presented the facts, and she said, do you realize you're funding the person who tried to murder me? Why are you doing that? She has been in the British press about this. So as much as to us who have not directly been seen or been affected by the terror, we've all been affected by the terror, but haven't experienced it in a family member, it's horrible enough to those people, to those family members, to the thousands of people who lost loved ones, to know that the international community is funding the murderers who killed the loved ones or the terrorists who injured them. That's an outrage, and it's a shame on the international community.
People who are listening to this and didn't realize what was going on, how can they do something to change this?
On the Palestinian Media Watch website, we have little posters that we've made of many of the families, of many of the terrorists, and who they've killed and how much money they're making. People can go to our website, palwatch.org. They can download these posters. We can send them also links to all of the posters, and then they can take these posters, walk into their members of parliament, and sit down with them and say, here, look at this. This person was a British person. This person was from the Netherlands. This person was an American. Go to your representatives and say, why are you funding? Why is my tax dollars going to pay this murderer who killed a British citizen? And that's the message. They can do that, and it definitely does impact.
What's your prayer for the families of the victims of terror?
I would love to be able to pray for them to have some kind of closure, but I know there's no such thing. There's no closure. A person whose family member was lost, it is forever. I just pray for them to be strong as they can be, and hopefully there won't be any more.
What's your website again for people who'd like to be actively involved in the work that you're doing?
Our website is palwatch.org, and then we can also be followed on Twitter and on Facebook with those same addresses, palwatch.org. And please follow us and spread the word, because the more people out there, the more people who know about this, the more people who will pressure on their governments, the better it will be, not just for Israelis in the long run, but certainly for Palestinians as well.
Okay, Itamar, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.